Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a YouTube commentary that looks at a bunch of Donald Trump's New Year's social media posts and makes a pretty bold claim that they aren't random at all. Instead, they're part of a calculated political firestorm. So let's break down how this commentator actually builds his case.
So, the guy behind this commentary is named Professor Nez, and his whole take is that these posts created a firestorm. He argues that this wasn't just random venting, but a volley of truth bombs meant to lay out a very specific agenda. So, how does he connect the dots? Let's take a look.
All right, so first things first, the commentator sets the stage. He's basically saying, hey, pay attention, because these posts aren't just off-the-cuff remarks. He sees them as a deliberate preview for what he calls the banger year of 2026.
The whole thing kicks off with this clip from New Year's Eve. Now, according to Nez, that simple answer, peace on earth, isn't just a throwaway line. No, he frames it as a symbol of Trump's real message, one that he says is completely at odds with how the media usually portrays him.
Okay, so from that opening message of peace, the narrative takes a sharp turn. We're jumping right into the first huge theme, allegations of massive fraud, with a laser focus on Minnesota.
Now, the argument really zeroes in on what the commentator, citing another journalist, calls the Minnesota Somali fraud. And he starts connecting all these different pieces, right? You've got billions in alleged financial fraud, this specific daycare scandal, a super suspicious break-in where key documents just poof, disappear, and then he ties it all back to Minnesota's election laws.
And we're not talking small potatoes here. To drive the point home, the source video plays a clip of Trump himself throwing out this absolutely massive number, $18 billion. So the commentator is using that number to frame this whole thing not as some minor problem, but as the tip of a ginormous iceberg.
And here's some of the evidence presented. The thinking here, according to the commentator, is that when Trump highlights this mysterious break-in, he's doing more than just stating a fact. He's giving a nod, a signal of support to the investigative journalists who broke the story in the first place. And this is where the commentator says the real pivot happens. He argues that this post is where the story shifts from just being about financial crime to being about election integrity. And the bridge connecting the two? Minnesota's voter vouching system. All right, moving on. The next big theme the commentary pulls out of these posts is all about immigration, what's happening at the border, and the policies of so-called sanctuary cities. The commentator shines a spotlight on this specific conflict. He frames it as Trump responding to something the LA mayor, Karen Bass, supposedly said. And Trump's post is shown as this direct clapback, which Nez interprets as a strong defense of the Hispanic agents working for Border Patrol.
And to add some weight to that idea, the source video cuts to a clip of Paul Perez, the president of the Border Patrol Council. The commentator uses his testimony to basically say, see, the agents' reasons for doing their job are being twisted.
The whole immigration and crime theme keeps rolling, according to the source, with this next post about the National Guard. The way the commentator reads this is twofold. One, Trump is taking a victory lap for lowering crime, but two, he's also firing a warning shot, telling those cities, just wait and see what happens when the Guard is gone.
And that leads us right into the third big theme that the commentator pulls out of all this, going after political opponents and doing it directly and personally.
First on the list, a pretty long post aimed squarely at actor George Clooney. Now, the commentator argues this is more than just a simple jab. It's framed as a much bigger critique of Clooney's political instincts and, what the post basically calls out as his hypocrisy. Okay, next up, the commentary zooms in on this broadside against the Democratic Party as a whole. And according to the source, the argument being made here is pretty blunt. If you're against voter ID laws, that's all the proof anyone needs that you're planning to cheat.
And this is where it all starts coming together, according to the commentator. The source presents this post as the moment Trump connects the dots himself, linking those big Minnesota fraud claims directly to Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and flat out calling her a scammer.
So, you've got fraud, immigration, and political attacks. How does the commentator wrap this all up? Well, let's see how the source video turns this into a single, cohesive vision for the future.
And here it is, the big finale from the commentator. He actually coins a term for it, the year of accountability. He's arguing that these posts aren't just rants, they're a mission statement, a promise to go after all these issues full steam ahead.
So, based on everything we've seen, the commentator lays out what he believes is a pretty clear roadmap for the year.
The argument is that this messaging signals a major shift, a pivot away from other stuff and onto a domestic agenda that is just laser-focused on two things: election integrity and going after all that alleged fraud.
But in the end, the commentator's point is even bigger than just Trump's posts. He wraps it up by saying that this whole firestorm is really meant to give a big thumbs up to an entire alternative media world. A world where, as he puts it, the concerns of regular people are finally being taken seriously.
So, what we've really broken down here is how a commentator can take what looks like a random series of social media posts and weave them together into one powerful story about the future. And it kind of leaves you with a big question, right? When we're consuming media, how much of what we're getting is the actual event? And how much is the story that someone is telling us about that event?